Still staying on the death of Queen Elizabeth II, President Muhammadu Buhari has joined citizens of the world in paying their last respects to the British monarch, who died at the age of 96 yesterday. Buhari says the story of modern Nigeria will never be complete without a chapter on the late monarch. He said she dedicated her life to making her nation, the Commonwealth, and the entire world a better place. Nigerian citizens also expressed their sadness at the departure of the monarch.
So I felt so sad when I heard about her passing, but I also celebrate her life as a symbol of leadership, symbol of peace. And I remember that she gave us our independence and the platter of gold, and that I'm grateful about. And of course, I ask her soul rest in perfect peace.
She has done her best, and she has handed over the battle to us. So I just wish the people of England all the best, and nevertheless, it's a time of sober reflection. And she has lived a life that everybody, those in one way or the other, benefit.
We thank the Lord that God allowed her to live long on earth. And we also thank God that all the period of time he was in power in England, so he ruled the country very well.
We're now joined by Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, former Nigerian Minister of Foreign Affairs. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Tundon.
Well, good morning, Prof. Well, quickly, the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, British monarch, 1952 to 2022, and President Buhari saying we can't write Nigerian history without a chapter on Queen Elizabeth II. What's your reaction to that?
Well, they say, or William Shakespeare wrote in Julius Caesar that when beggars die, no comets are seen. But the heavens proclaim the death of princes. I'm not surprised that for the past 24 hours, the world has stood still in terms of concentration on the life and times of Queen Elizabeth II. And without one sounding, well, shall one say fetish or religious, I'm not even surprised that over Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, and Balmoral Castle, there was a rainbow when her death was announced. So the heavens were actually proclaiming the death of Queen Elizabeth II. I first saw her, I didn't say meet her, I first saw her in 1956 when, as Princess Elizabeth, she came on an official visit to Nigeria, and I was one of the secondary school kids in my khaki shorts, lined up waving the Union Jack flags. And later on, of course, as Director General and I, we went for a conference at Chatham House in London, and we were taken to Buckingham Palace along with other delegates and met her brief. I mean, she went around shaking hands, you know, with all of us. Then as a minister, I met her 3 times. And a little conversation, usually asking about, you know, one's health, asking about one's impression of Britain, and what have you. And then after I ceased being minister, I met her twice. And I must say, and I'm not blushing, but I made a fool of myself on one of those occasions. It was a Sunday, and we had gone to the Windsor Castle Chapel to join her in service. And the tradition was usually after service, we come out first, and then when she comes out, she would then go round on her right, shaking hands, and Prince Philip will go on the left circle, shaking hands. And when she got to me, remember, you're not supposed to talk to the Queen. She talks to you. And if she then asks you a question, you can give her a reply. So when she got to me, she said, "And what do you do?" Honestly, I told her the truth. I said I was writing my memoirs. Her head went back. She burst into this laughter. Your memoirs? And then she called her Philip, and then she walked away. And I wanted to say to her, "Your Majesty, I have met you 3 times as a foreign minister, and this and this and these are things which I have done." But she took one look at my face, thought I was 38 or 40 years old, and it was like, what has he done? That is, writing his memoirs. But it was true. I was writing my memoirs up till today. When I remember the episode, I kind of shudder. But so those are really I then met her a few times after that, usually under the either a conference or whatever it is we are doing. I have a lot. I heard what Ms. Abiola said in your earlier program. I also have a lot of affection for Her late Majesty. She was everybody's auntie. I think that her role in managing the transition of the empire into the Commonwealth must not be understated. Let me give one illustration. At the time when she got onto the throne, and in the 50s, there was racial discrimination all over the world, and some of it had sexual overtones. And then she went to Ghana. Nkrumah was in power. She went to Ghana on a state visit, and she danced with Kwame Nkrumah. I'm not sure whether it was a waltz they did or it was high life that they were dancing to. And Prince Philip was dancing with, I don't think Nkrumah was married at that time. It could have been the wife of maybe the Ghanaian Chief Justice. And this picture went all over the world. A British monarch, a British queen, dancing with an African president. You can imagine the reverberation, not in Britain alone, but even in the United States. That kind of soft diplomacy, she was a master of it. And that, I would say, changed to some extent, or contributed to managing the transmission of the empire into the Commonwealth. So that by the time when African states then became independent en masse in the 60s, it was not even regarded anymore as something eyebrow-raising for them to join the Commonwealth and to be invited to Buckingham Palace. I do accept that she didn't have any power, but the influence that she did have in putting Margaret Thatcher in her place during the struggle for the ending of apartheid. Recall that Margaret Thatcher was against economic sanctions, and that came close to breaking the Commonwealth, because the African states were united. India was with us. The countries of the West Indies were with the African countries, but Margaret Thatcher stood her ground. And the Queen let it be known by her action in not only in inviting but in making sure the African presidents were seated prominently close to her at the state dinner, that she was on their side. And Margaret Thatcher had to tone down her body language towards what we were demanding. So I think that she played that kind of soft power diplomacy in helping our position on the anti-apartheid struggle. She presided obviously over Britain, but she presided over a period that started with the Cold War, at the height of the Cold War, when we were not sure whether we were going to all be blown up in an atomic conflagration, to the ending of that Cold War, to a one-power world order. And now, it's a pity that she died at the time when that world order had gone to pieces, and we are approaching a new world order whose parameters are in a state of flux. Probably the young leaders that now rule the world will have benefited from her wisdom in ensuring that the new world order is not built on antagonisms towards each other, but respect for the differences and as to how to manage these differences. Because she had seen it all, apart from the 15 prime ministers she had in Britain, I don't remember the number of American presidents that she had to manage relationship with, how many popes that she had met. She was an accumulation of wisdom that is much needed at this time.
As the African proverb goes, truly a library has burnt down. And thank you also for mentioning the meteorological events that happened at her passing. I also thought of that line that Calpurnia, the wife of Julius Caesar, spoke to her husband in William Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar. The heavens did blaze forth the death of a queen. But I also think of the lines from Twelfth Night by William Shakespeare. Malvolio spoke to Olivia. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. Let's talk about the accidental nature of her reign as monarch. She was never meant to be queen. This woman who wanted to just be a country housefrau and take care of her husband ended up being thrust into the most public of roles, and remarkably never put a foot wrong in 70 years. I don't know how many people in public life can make that claim. Such was her dedication to her post, her restraint, her wisdom. Let's talk about that too, and also the fact that she was so hardworking. In today's generation, they have something called quiet quitting, where you go to work and do the barest minimum. This is somebody who only took 2 days off a year, her birthday and Christmas Day. Other than that, she was working on those red boxes. This is somebody who never went on holiday to foreign shore. She stayed in her country. She holidayed in the United Kingdom. She was not, in fact, on holiday in Kenya when she became queen. She was on a tour of the Commonwealth. It was a working visit, which she was representing her father when the news came that he had passed on. So let's just pay tributes to who she was, how hardworking she was, how dutiful, how diligent, and just really how remarkable, extraordinary she was, and her reign.
Well, since you and I are on a roller coaster of quotations this morning, there's a man proposes, God disposes. So rightly said, she wasn't meant to be queen. She ended up being queen. Secondly, I would like to draw emphasis again to a point you made, that she never spent her holidays or leave abroad. Let that be a lesson to our governors and African presidents who On their leave, immediately pack their boxes into their official jet planes and fly off to Europe or to Florida or Atlanta to spend their holidays before coming back. If you make your country one that your citizens feel comfortable living in, there will be no reason for you at the drop of a hat, jetting out on holidays or going on economic missions and what have you. That is a lesson that one can draw from Her Majesty or Her late Majesty, the Queen. I also believe that she presided over, or she reigned over a united kingdom that's probably not as united when she took over as it is now. And yet, in spite of the secessionist moves in Scotland, partly in Wales, and the split Northern Irish conundrum, she was very popular, very respected all over the United Kingdom. Let this be a lesson again to African presidents. I reverse myself. Let it be a lesson to presidents all over the world who are in charge of countries that have diverse cultures and diverse nationalities. That if you show respect and understanding for the aspirations and interests of these different parts, in fact, you could end up being a unifying factor rather than a divisive factor in managing the affairs of your country. I mean, the way she managed to remain on top of, you remember that referendum on Scottish independence. You know, I mean, she was half Scot. Her mother was Scottish. And there's no doubt that she would prefer Britain to remain united. And yet she kept above it, not demonizing or antagonizing that section of the Scots who wanted independence from the United Kingdom. It was a master performance in statesmanship, in craftsmanship, and that, again, I would recommend for leaders all over the world, especially at this time when countries, including her own, are split with one section going left, the other section going right. It's something you have in the United States, it's something you have in Britain, it's something you have in India. Let them take a leaf from her book as to how to ride above this storm. There are several aspects that I will also recommend to Prince Charles III to be more his mother than his father. And I'm sure that, my listeners will know what I mean by that. She was, as hardworking as she was not an in-your-face person, unlike Philip, who delighted in antagonizing people and in offending people. I hope that King Charles, in managing or in reigning over the United Kingdom, will have borrowed that aspect of his mother's character than his father's character.
I also want to backtrack a bit and give a little context to the story you told about the dance with Kwame Nkrumah, because a lot of people don't celebrate the Queen enough because of that dance, because the context was Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana was going communist full-time, and she needed to de-escalate tensions. And that dance alone that shaped the mindset of Kwame Nkrumah, helped for communism not to gain a foothold on the African continent, which will have swayed the way the Cold War was going. And that's another masterstroke. But I also want you to talk through the sad time she had. 92, for instance, which she called a very disastrous year.
Annus Horribilis.
Annus Horribilis, the misfortunes she had, the fact that around that year, part of Windsor was burnt. 96 was another one when 97 was another one when Diana passed, and all the things she went through and the way she handled it, even, with her sister's marriage and all of that, Now she handled all of that with grace. And looking forward to the future, because the sad reality is we are back where we used to be in 42, 43, 44, 45. The world is insecure now because of people like Putin. The world order is gone, no longer the way it used to be before again. What will be the future after Queen Elizabeth?
Well, she's reported to have said, because one aspect of her character was you never knew what she was thinking, and that was a good filter between her and all these problems that you have identified. But she's reported to have said that she regretted the way she handled the difficulties between Diana and Charles, and that she would have done things differently now looking back at what happened. But I get the point that you have made about her ability to have handled these disasters, and they were disasters. It was a dysfunctional family which she presided over. Her eldest son had a divorce. The daughter had a divorce. There was another son also who had a divorce. And then, of course, you know about Prince Andrew's, Prince Andrew's own difficulties. And then Harry and Meghan's, Harry was her favorite grandson. And it must have broken the poor woman's heart what happened between the royal family and Harry and Meghan. But a trooper that she was, she handled it with, I would say, with wisdom. She didn't allow it to break her. And even if she cried, it was in the rain, so you wouldn't see those tears. And that reinforces the point I made earlier on about rulers borrowing a leaf from her capacity to not overcome, but her capacity to absorb the blows that nature threw at her and continued to perform her functions as the Queen of England and the health of the Commonwealth. What the future will hold, who knows? She herself was an accident of, at least at that time, she was an accident of the future. As Tundum mentioned earlier on, she wasn't born to be queen. And yet, when she stepped in, at the age of 25, how many people? I mean, at the age of 25, how many even of our president leaders are showing a sense of responsibility, managing the affairs of their nation? I remember a quote attributed to John F. Kennedy that if there was such a thing as Queen of the World or President of the World, he would gladly sponsor the Queen of England to be that president. And that was after just one meeting with her at Buckingham Palace. I mean, for John F. Kennedy to have said that, it shows a lot. We can deconstruct and write a whole book on that supposed quotation from JFK. I hope, because the future is fraught with enormous danger. And Putin is not the only one responsible for that. The United States, with its flip-flop of leadership, I'm not running down democracy, by the way. I'm as good a Democrat as the next fellow. But, you know, to go from Obama to Trump, then to Biden, and we don't know in 2 years' time to what? To Trump again, or to even somebody worse than Trump. You had the problem with China, which I don't believe is being well managed. You have the problem with North Korea, which is not being well managed. And His Holiness the Pope have said that actually we have begun World War III, that she will leave the world at this time. And that's what I meant by her capacity to manage disparate tragedies and differences in her own country. Various leaders in the world will have benefited from just advice from her about show respect for differences, don't turn differences into antagonisms that can only be resolved by war. It's one thing, my own experience, short one for that matter, in dealing with leaders of the world. To me, and I hope I'm not being misogynist in a positive sense here, when you met Queen Elizabeth, or you met Indira Gandhi, two women that I met, you stop thinking, oh, I'm meeting with foreign leaders. You start thinking of, oh, I'm meeting with my grandmother, or I'm meeting with my auntie. Therefore, I better, be on the best behavior. My views better be transmitted in a way that will not be offensive. Whereas, when you are meeting Trump or Putin or Mao Zedong or that kind of thing, maybe the masochism that tends to come out between two men come onto the surface. It's a pity that with Charles, he's going to be tested. Foreign leaders will test him to see whether he's absorbed that capacity of his mother, which has impressed all of us.
Well, thank you, Prof. Thank you very much indeed.